On our anniversary, my husband and his entire family tried to kick me out of the home I paid for. But they didn't expect what I had already prepared. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Harper Lane, and I'm 32 years old. I've been with my husband, Evan Callister, for 7 years and married to him for 5. When we first met, he was charming, soft-spoken, and the kind of man who made empty spaces feel warm. I believed in him so much that when he struggled to stay steady in his career, I stepped in without hesitation. I worked longer hours, picked up extra shifts, and did whatever I needed to make sure we stayed afloat. Eventually, I bought the house we lived in. My savings, my credit, my responsibility. I never threw it in his face. I just wanted us to have a home, a place where we could grow and build a life. But the more I worked, the more Evan's family twisted things. His mother, Patricia, always had something snide to say about me being too independent. His sister, Lila, acted like I had stolen Evan from their family. They both made comments about how a real wife would let the husband lead, even though Evan barely contributed financially. Their resentment never came from anything I did. It came from the fact that I didn't depend on them, and they couldn't control me. I brushed it off at first because I loved Evan, and I thought love meant being patient with the people who mattered to him. But over the years, the tension turned into something heavier. Patricia started making surprise visits, walking around my house as if she were inspecting it. Lila brought her friends over unannounced and acted like I was the guest. Evan never defended me. He said I was reading too much into things. Still, every time I questioned him about the way they treated me, he insisted I was imagining it. He told me his family loved me. He told me I was overreacting. He told me to let small things go. So I tried that I kept quiet when Patricia criticized how I decorated my own home. I looked away when Lila joked that Evan could do better. I stayed calm when Evan brushed off their rudeness as just their personalities. I convinced myself that the peace of the marriage mattered more than the disrespect I felt from his family. I kept telling myself that maybe one day, Evan would finally step up and draw a line. But deep down, a part of me sensed something was shifting. The silence around the tension felt heavier. The strange looks between Evan and Patricia lasted too long. Lila's snarky remarks had more bite than before. Still, I tried to believe in the good. I thought our anniversary would remind us of how far we'd come. I thought maybe we would reconnect. I thought the day would bring love, not betrayal. That I had no idea how wrong I was, or how much they had already planned behind my back. I spent the whole afternoon preparing dinner for our anniversary. I cleaned the house, set the table with candles, and made Evan's favorite meal. I wanted the night to feel warm, calm, and full of the love we had somehow lost in the past year. Even though things had been tense, I still hoped he would walk through the door, see everything I had done, and remember the woman who had stood by him through every setback. When I heard the front door open, I took a deep breath and smiled. But the moment I walked out of the kitchen, my smile froze. Evan wasn't alone. He walked in with his mother, Patricia, his sister, Lila, and a man I had never seen before. The man wore a stiff suit and carried a leather briefcase. Patricia stood with her arms crossed, already looking at me like she had won something. Lila looked excited, almost smug. Evan didn't even look guilty. He didn't even look confused. He looked ready. "Harper, we need to talk," he said, like he was giving instructions at a meeting. The man with them stepped forward and introduced himself as an attorney who worked with Evan's uncle. I didn't understand why an attorney was in my house on my anniversary. I looked at Evan, hoping he would explain, but he just stared back at me like I was a stranger. Patricia didn't wait. She said, "This marriage isn't working anymore, Harper. And Evan has decided it's time for you to move out." I felt my body go cold. Move out? From my own home? I laughed for a second because it didn't sound real. But Evan didn't flinch. The attorney opened his briefcase and pulled out papers like this was some kind of scheduled appointment. Evan finally spoke. "I think it's best if you pack your things tonight," he said flatly. "We're not going to drag this out." I stared at him, trying to process the words. "Tonight?" I asked. "You expect me to leave my own house tonight?" Patricia cut in quickly. "Evan's house," she said sharply. "This home has always belonged to the Callister family. You've been living here as his wife, and now that the marriage is ending, it's time for you to step aside." Lila nodded like she was approving a courtroom verdict. "It's only fair," she added, that I felt something sharp twist in my chest. "The house is in my name," I said, trying to stay steady. I bought this house. The attorney calmly slid a stack of papers onto the dining table, right on top of the plates I had set for our anniversary dinner. According to the records Evan provided, he said, this property is under his name. Evan didn't even look at the table I had set for him. He said, there's no point fighting it. Just pack your things. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the cruel realization that this wasn't sudden. They had planned this. The timing, the attorney, the lies, they came here tonight because they thought I would be too shocked to fight back. The warm dinner behind me went cold. The candles kept burning, but the night had already turned dark. Patricia stepped forward like she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Her voice was sharp and full of something she didn't even try to hide anymore. This house, this life, everything you've been enjoying, it all belongs to the Callister bloodline, she said. We're simply taking back what should have never been in your hands. I felt every word hit me like a slap. She didn't say Evan. She said we. This wasn't my husband making a decision. This was his entire family acting as if I was some stranger squatting in their property. Lila smirked, leaning against the wall like she was watching a show. Honestly, Harper, you had to know this was coming. Evan deserves someone who fits his family better. She looked me up and down with slow, mocking eyes. Someone who actually belongs here. Her words didn't hurt the way she probably wanted them to. They disgusted me. But what hurt, really hurt, was the way Evan stood there saying nothing, doing nothing, just letting them talk like this. I turned to him, hoping to see even a spark of regret on his face. But he looked right through me. Cold. Detached. Like our years together had disappeared overnight. Then he reached into the attorney's briefcase and pulled out a folded stack of papers that he handed them to me without meeting my eyes. This is an eviction notice, he said quietly, almost practiced. I already signed everything. You just need to read it. My fingers shook as I unfolded the papers. You wrote this ahead of time? I asked, barely able to get the words out. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The date at the top was from 2 weeks ago, long before our anniversary. Long before tonight. He had been planning to kick me out while I was buying groceries and cooking dinner, still believing we were okay. Lila let out a short laugh. She looks shocked, she said to her mother. Like she didn't think Evan would actually choose his family. Patricia nodded. We knew she'd be stubborn, but at least we can do this properly now. I felt the room tilt. Everything inside me wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand explanations. But instead, I looked around and saw the truth. The attorney. The signed papers. Their matching attitudes. Their timing. The way they chose our anniversary for this. This wasn't an argument. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was an ambush. They had all agreed on this. Planned it. Prepared it. They walked into my home ready to humiliate me on the one day that was supposed to mean something to my marriage. Evening clothes, a romantic dinner on the table, candles lit. None of it mattered. They wanted me out, and they wanted to see the look on my face when they took everything from me. But they didn't know me as well as they thought. They didn't know what I had already noticed weeks ago. They didn't know what I had already done quietly, without saying a word. They thought this was the moment they won. They had no idea this was the moment everything would turn against them. As I stood there holding the eviction notice Evan had already prepared, my mind drifted back through the years. The years I had given him and his family without questioning anything. It was strange how fast memories can rush in when your heart is breaking. Suddenly, all the pieces of my past sacrifices lined up in front of me, clearer than ever. I remembered the day I bought the house. I was the one who found it, toured it, and signed the papers. I paid the down payment with the savings I had been building for years before I even met Evan. He was excited but embarrassed that he couldn't contribute. I told him it didn't matter, that we were a team. Now here he was, pretending it was his. Then there was his failed business. He had taken a huge loan he couldn't pay back after everything collapsed. I was the one who stepped in and cleared the debt because collectors were calling nonstop. I didn't want him to drown in it, so I worked overtime for months to stay on top of everything. I kept telling myself that helping him was the right thing to do. I never complained. I never brought it up again. I just kept going. And Patricia, there were memories there too. The year she needed a medical procedure that her insurance didn't fully cover, I quietly used my credit card to pay what she couldn't. She thanked me then, but it didn't take long before she went back to treating me like I was a bother. When she recovered, she acted like it had been her right to receive help from me. Now she stood in my home acting like I had taken something from her. Lila wasn't any different. She called me sister when she needed money for her car repairs. She said it was an emergency and that she would pay me back the next month. She never did. She avoided the subject every time I brought it up. But I let it go because I didn't want to create problems between her and Evan. I thought keeping peace in the family was more important. Every memory stabbed with a different kind of pain. I wasn't perfect, but I had given so much of myself. To Evan, to his mother, to his sister. I supported them in ways they didn't even realize. I made choices that cost me financially and emotionally because I believed in our marriage, and I believed that love meant being there when things got hard. But now they stood in front of me, acting as if I was nothing. As if I had been living in their world as a guest, not someone who built the life they benefited from. They acted like I was disposable, something they could push out whenever they felt like it. The hurt spread through my chest, heavy and deep. But underneath that hurt, something else was growing. Something steady. Something sharp. My heartbreak was turning into anger. Not the kind that makes you shout, but the kind that clears your mind. The kind that makes you stop doubting yourself. The kind that shows you exactly who people are. They thought I was weak. They thought I would break. They thought they could erase everything I had done for them. But they had no idea what that moment unlocked inside me. I stood there, holding the eviction notice like it weighed 100 pounds. The room felt tight, their eyes waiting for me to break, to fall apart, to beg. But something inside me finally settled. I didn't feel the need to shout or cry. All the shock and hurt had burned into a quiet, steady calm. So I looked at each of them. Evan, Patricia, Lila, even the attorney who didn't know he was standing in the middle of a family betrayal, and I asked one simple question. Are you all sure this is what you want? My voice wasn't shaking. It wasn't angry. It was clear. Strong. The kind of voice you use when you finally see the truth. Evan didn't hesitate. He didn't even blink. He actually smirked, like this was his victory. Yes, he said. This is the best decision for everyone. Everyone. That word stung, but I didn't let it show. Patricia let out a breath like she had been holding it in for years. Good, she said, clapping her hands lightly. Then let's not drag this out any longer. Pack your things before sunset. We'll give you a little time to collect yourself. She spoke to me like I was some tenant overstaying my welcome. Lila folded her arms and nodded along, already acting like I was gone. I should have felt destroyed. I should have collapsed. But instead, I felt the opposite. A strange strength filled me, steady and cold. I realized in that moment that they had no idea what I had spent the last few weeks doing. They didn't know I had noticed Evan acting differently. They didn't know I saw the bank withdrawals. They didn't know I remembered every conversation where they slipped and revealed more than they meant. They didn't know about the papers I had already pulled from the drawer in the study and locked away. They didn't know about the recordings, small, simple, legal recordings of Patricia and Lila admitting things they shouldn't have said out loud. They thought this was the big moment. But I had already been preparing for mine. I folded the eviction notice slowly and placed it back on the table. All right, I said softly. Patricia blinked, surprised by how calm I was. Good, she repeated, though her voice had lost a little confidence. I walked past them, picked up my purse, and headed toward the door. Behind me, I heard Lila whisper to Evan. That was easier than we thought. Evan let out a small laugh, as if this was all some perfect plan falling into place. But they didn't understand what my silence meant. They didn't understand what walking away quietly meant. They didn't understand that I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving to prepare the moment that would destroy everything they thought they controlled. As I stepped outside, the evening air hit my face. The house behind me wasn't just a home anymore. It was evidence. Proof. A place full of things they didn't know I had already secured. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I simply walked to my car with one clear thought. If they wanted a war, they should have made sure I had nothing left to lose. I drove straight to Monica's place without stopping. She was the one person I trusted completely, the one person who had seen every stage of my marriage without judgment. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask a single question. She just stepped aside and let me in. As soon as we sat down, the words came out of me in pieces. I told her everything. How Evan arrived with his family, how they tried to force me out, how they claimed the house belonged to him, how he handed me an eviction notice like I was nothing. Monica didn't interrupt. She listened with a calm, steady anger building in her eyes. When I finished, she folded her arms and said, "Good thing you trusted your instincts weeks ago. Now let's finish what we started." Monica was a real estate paralegal, which meant she knew exactly where the cracks in their plan would be. She walked to her office and brought out a folder. The one we had quietly started putting together when I first came to her about the strange bank activity and Evan's sudden change in behavior, that we spread everything across her kitchen table. The first thing she placed in front of me was the original house deed. My name. Only my name. No joint ownership. No shared rights. This alone was enough to destroy the entire lie Evan and his family tried to push on me. My stomach tightened with relief and anger all at once. Next were the loan records. Monica had helped me download and organize every payment I made on the house, every bank transfer, every receipt connected to it. There was not a single trace of Evan contributing financially. Not then, not ever. The lie they tried to sell me earlier was weaker than they knew. She then showed me the screenshots of text messages Evan had sent me months before, admitting he was depending on my income. He had said it casually at the time, almost like a joke. But Monica had flagged those messages instantly. "This shows financial dependency," she said. "It's stronger than people realize." Then we moved on to the receipts. Every dollar I had given Patricia for her medical expenses. Every payment I covered when Lila needed help. All laid out in a neat line. None of it had been repaid. None of it had been acknowledged. But now it would all matter. Lastly, Monica placed the evidence of the secret withdrawals Evan had made. Money moved into an account I didn't know existed. Withdrawals that didn't match any bills or household expenses. She had already printed statements and highlighted the suspicious patterns. Looking at everything together made me feel both proud and sick. Proud that I had paid attention. Sick that Evan had taken advantage of my trust for so long. Monica touched my hand. "Harper, you have everything you need. Legally, you're protected. Morally, you're 10 times stronger than them. Now we build this into something they can't escape." We spent hours organizing, labeling, and preparing. Monica typed out a detailed timeline while I gathered more small pieces of proof from my emails and old messages. By the time midnight passed, we weren't just collecting documents. We were building a trap so tight that Evan and his family wouldn't be able to breathe their way out of it. For the first time that day, I felt in control again. I wasn't the woman being kicked out of her own house. I wasn't the one standing silent while they tried to erase everything I had built. That I was the one preparing the truth. Steady, clear, and impossible to twist. They thought pushing me out would be the end of me. They had no idea it was the beginning of the end for them. The next morning, I stood in front of my house with Caleb Jensen, the attorney Monica recommended, and a sheriff's deputy. The sun was barely up, but my mind was clear. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't confused or shaken. I was ready. We walked up the driveway, and before we even reached the door, we heard voices inside. Patricia barking orders, Lila laughing loudly, Evan talking like he finally felt important. They were already acting like they owned the place. They honestly thought I had disappeared for good. Caleb knocked firmly, and when Evan opened the door, the confidence drained from his face the moment he saw the deputy beside me. Patricia appeared behind him with a shocked gasp, and Lila froze on the staircase. I stepped inside without asking. This was my home, after all. "What are you doing here?" Patricia snapped, her voice rising too quickly. "You were told to leave." Caleb answered calmly. "Mrs. Lane is the legal owner of this property. She has every right to be here." Evan tried to laugh it off. "No, she's not. The house belongs to me. I already explained that." Caleb didn't bother arguing. He simply opened the folder he brought and held out the deed. The original deed, the one Monica had helped me retrieve. "Mr. Callister, the property is registered under Harper Lane. She is the sole owner. You have no legal claim." The deputy backed him up immediately. "Unless you can show documentation proving otherwise, which you do not, this residence belongs to her." Patricia grabbed the papers out of Caleb's hand, scanning them like she hoped they would magically change. "This is wrong," she snapped. "You must have tricked him. This house was supposed to be Evan's." "It never was," I said quietly. "Not legally. Not financially. Not in any way." Evan's face went red. "You're lying. You're twisting everything. That's not how this works." The deputy stepped forward. "Sir, you need to calm down. You and your family have no legal right to remain in this home if the owner asks you to leave." Patricia let out a high, angry sound, her voice cracking. "We're not leaving. Not after everything we've done for you." Caleb looked at her without emotion. "Mrs. Lane has documented every dollar she has ever given you and your daughter. If you want to bring up what you've done for her, we can bring up what she's done for you. But I don't think you want that conversation in front of a judge." Patricia's face twisted with rage. Lila stomped down the stairs. "You're heartless, Harper. You really want to embarrass us like this?" After being part of this family, I finally looked her in the eye. Family doesn't ambush you on your anniversary and try to steal your home. She opened her mouth again, but the deputy cut her off. "You all need to gather your things and leave the property immediately. This is not negotiable." For a moment, the room went silent. Evan looked at the ground, fists clenched, breathing hard. Patricia muttered angry curses under her breath. Lila glared at me like I had destroyed her life. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked deeper into my house, my kitchen, my living room, my space, while they watched helplessly. I had left last night quietly. This time, I walked in with everything I needed, and they couldn't do a single thing to stop me. Harper stood in her living room, facing all of them with calm eyes. Evan looked pale now, no longer confident. Patricia and Lila kept whispering to each other, pretending nothing was wrong, but the fear in their faces was clear. Harper didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply opened her folder and placed document after document on the table, each one cutting through their lies. She began with the refinance papers. Evan had tried to deny everything earlier, but the forged signature was right there, bold and obvious. The handwriting wasn't even close to hers. The moment Evan saw it, his face tightened. He tried to say it was a misunderstanding, a simple mistake, but the attorney shook his head. Forging a signature on a financial document wasn't a mistake. It was a crime. Then Harper brought out the credit inquiry records. Patricia and Lila had tried to use her credit without her permission. They had applied for a loan in her name and assumed she would never find out. Patricia tried to speak first, claiming they were only trying to help Evan get back on his feet. But her voice shook, and the deputy standing near the doorway didn't look impressed. Lila tried to blame everything on Evan, but the texts Harper had saved showed they were both involved. Next came the proof of Evan's hidden account. Harper calmly passed the statements to her attorney, who read them aloud. Evan had been quietly moving marital funds for months, preparing for a future without her. He had planned to abandon her and leave her with nothing, all while using her money to keep himself and his family comfortable. Even Patricia looked shocked at that part, realizing Evan hadn't told her everything either. Her attorney explained the charges being filed: fraud, identity misuse, unauthorized transfers. Patricia and Lila would receive civil notices for their attempts to use Harper's credit. Evan would face an investigation that could cost him his job and more. The room went completely silent except for Evan's unsteady breathing. Evan stepped forward, his voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. He begged Harper to reconsider. He said they could fix things, that he was sorry, that he had been under pressure. He tried to reach for her hands, but she stepped back before he got close. She looked at him with calm, steady eyes and told him she wasn't dropping anything. Not after everything he had done. Not after he and his family tried to throw her out of her own home. Patricia started crying loudly, accusing Harper of destroying the family. Lila called her cold, saying she should have handled this privately. But Harper didn't argue. She didn't explain. She simply gathered her documents and handed everything else to her attorney. For the first time, they understood that Harper wasn't someone they could walk over. Their plan had fallen apart in front of them, piece by piece. Their reputation, the one they guarded so carefully, was already slipping away. People would know the truth soon, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Harper walked out of the room without looking back, feeling lighter with every step. She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't needed to. The truth had done all the work for her. After the confrontation, Harper moved quickly but calmly. She filed for divorce with the evidence she had gathered, confident that the truth was on her side. Every payment she had made on the house, every bank statement, every receipt for money given to Patricia and Lila, all of it was carefully documented. The attorney presented everything to the court, leaving no room for Evan or his family to manipulate the situation. When the divorce was finalized, Harper kept everything that belonged to her. The house, of course, remained hers. The place she had built, paid for, and cared for was officially and legally hers to stay in. She also kept the joint savings account, including the bonuses Evan had earned over the past year. Money she had contributed to in her own way, but that had been quietly redirected to his secret account. Finally, she secured Evan's recent bonuses that had been deposited, proving through her records that she had a rightful claim. The court recognized her contributions and her ownership of everything she had worked for, and Evan had no choice but to accept it. Evan moved out quickly, returning to his mother's small, cramped apartment. Patricia immediately started blaming him for the mess, shouting at him for not handling Harper more carefully, for letting their carefully planned eviction fail. Lila, who had once sneered at Harper for being heartless, now called the situation karma, as if she had expected this downfall to happen eventually. Harper didn't respond to any of it. She didn't gloat or make threats. She didn't need to. She was free, and that was enough. Back at home, Harper took a deep breath. For the first time in months, the house felt like her own again. She started small, changing the curtains, rearranging furniture, and painting walls in colors that made her feel calm. Each small act of reclaiming her space was a victory. She removed every trace of Evan, his belongings, his clothes, everything that reminded her of betrayal. She didn't leave anything behind that could remind her of the people who had tried to take everything from her. The house, once a place of tension and fear, slowly transformed into a sanctuary. Harper could finally sit at her kitchen table without feeling watched, or walk through the living room without feeling anger bubble up. Her mornings were quiet, her evenings peaceful, and the tension that had hung over her life lifted little by little. She realized she didn't need revenge to feel powerful. Her freedom, her control over her own life, was the real victory. She started taking time for herself in ways she hadn't allowed before. Long baths, quiet walks, afternoons spent reading in her sunlit living room. Every day, the peace grew, and so did her confidence. She had been betrayed, humiliated, and nearly forced out of her home, but she had turned the situation around. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her space. And finally, for the first time in years, Harper breathed freely, knowing she could never be forced into someone else's plan again. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm Harper had never truly known before. The house was quiet in a way that felt alive, not empty. She had spent weeks arranging it exactly how she wanted, filling it with the warmth she had always hoped a home could have. No one's voice cut through her peace. No one's judgment followed her from room to room. For the first time in years, she felt completely in control of her own life. At first, she thought she might feel the sting of loneliness. She imagined missing the companionship, even the flawed kind she had with Evan. But it didn't come. What came instead was clarity. The absence of betrayal and manipulation left space for her to breathe, to think, to feel what she had been denying herself all along. She realized she hadn't lost a marriage. She had escaped a trap. Every manipulation, every lie, every attempt to humiliate her had been a chain she now gladly broke. Her mind often drifted to the Callisters, to the people who had tried to erase her life in their home. She didn't feel anger the way she once imagined she would. There was only acknowledgement of the truth. She had been stronger than they expected, smarter than they believed, and unbreakable in ways they would never understand. They had tried to define her worth, to control her future, and instead, they had revealed their own weakness. That understanding gave her a strange satisfaction, not cruelly, but firmly, a quiet recognition of victory. One evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Harper stepped out onto her porch. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in streaks of pink and gold. She sat in her chair, letting the silence wash over her, letting herself feel everything she had survived. Her hands rested on her knees, her mind tracing the long road she had traveled. The sacrifices, the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the hard-won victories. She whispered to herself, almost without thinking, "I didn't get kicked out. I finally walked out, and I never looked back." The words tasted like freedom, solid and real. It wasn't just about the house or the money, she realized. It was about reclaiming her dignity, her self-respect, the right to live without fear or manipulation. She had proven to herself that she mattered, that she was enough, that she could stand alone and still thrive. The night settled around her like a soft blanket, and for the first time, Harper felt completely at peace. She understood now that betrayal, while painful, can be a push towards something greater. It can show you who you truly are, reveal strength you didn't know you had, and force you to fight for the life you deserve. Harper's story, her journey from being cornered, humiliated, and nearly erased, became a quiet reminder, not just to herself, but to anyone who might hear it someday, that sometimes the worst betrayal is the spark you need to reclaim your life, your power, and your peace. And in that moment, as the stars began to appear in the sky above her porch, Harper finally felt whole again, ready to embrace everything the future held without fear, regret, or looking back.